My daughter told me I was no longer important, right after handing me a brochure for assisted living and saying they'd already started packing up my attic. My son-in-law, he stood in my kitchen, drinking coffee from my favorite mug, and said, "It's better this way, Josephine. You'll be more comfortable." That's when I knew they weren't just pushing me aside, they were moving me out of my home, my choices, my life. So I packed a suitcase, booked a cruise with the emergency money my late husband left me, and disappeared for a week. But I didn't just sip cocktails and watch sunsets. I made a video will, gathered legal proof, and came back with something they didn't expect: power. Want to know what happened when I showed up at my own house and caught them mid-celebration, like I was already dead? Good. Because it wasn't just disrespect, it was betrayal. But trust me, I had a plan. Before we dive in, make sure you like this video, hit that subscribe button, and comment below where you're watching from. This one's for every woman who's ever been told she doesn't matter anymore. Let's begin. I was standing at the kitchen sink, peeling a sticker off an orange. The fruit was a little too soft, but I didn't mind. Mornings were quiet now, peaceful, mostly. The radio was playing low in the background, something from the 70s. I had just finished washing a couple of dishes, humming without really thinking, when I heard the door creak open. "Mom?" Dorothy's voice called from the hallway. "You home?" I dried my hands on the towel and stepped into the living room. Of course I'm home. Why wouldn't I be? She was already halfway in, and behind her was Walter, my son-in-law, carrying a thick binder and a small silver key in his hand. I blinked. What's all this? Dorothy gave me that tight smile she always used when she was about to say something she knew I wouldn't like. "We didn't want to surprise you, but, well, actually we sort of did. We came to talk about something important." Walter nodded like they'd rehearsed it. "We've been thinking, it's probably time to start downsizing." I frowned. Downsizing. Dorothy walked past me and set the binder on the dining table. "You've got too much on your plate, Mom. It's just a lot for one person to handle." "I'm handling it fine," I said, though my voice came out smaller than I meant. She opened the binder, revealing brochures, printed photos, even a colorful chart labeled Community Activities. She turned a page toward me. "This place is called Pine Grove. It's just 25 minutes from here. We booked a tour for next week. The manager said you can even bring your own rocking chair." I looked at the page, then back at her. "You booked a tour?" Walter held up the small key. "And we already moved a few things to storage, just a few boxes from the attic." My stomach turned. "You went through my attic?" Dorothy's eyes darted away. "Only the stuff you haven't touched in years. We're trying to help Mom. You don't need all that clutter." I didn't know what to say. My hands were still damp from the dishes. I could feel a water droplet slide down my wrist. "We talked to Pastor Glenn," she added. "He said sometimes a fresh start can be good, even at this stage." This stage. Like I was on my last chapter. Like I was someone being gently packed away. I pulled out a chair and sat down. "So you two just decided?" Walter shifted uncomfortably. "It's not like that. We've noticed things. You repeat stories. You forgot to pay the gas bill last month." "That was a banking error," I snapped. "And maybe I repeat stories because no one listens the first time." Dorothy sighed and leaned on the back of a chair. "Mom, it's not just that. It's the house. It's old. It needs work. And with Dad gone, it's too much. You shouldn't be alone in a place that big." It felt like the walls were closing in, like the room was getting smaller with every word they said. "How long have you been planning this?" I asked quietly. They didn't answer. I stood up and walked toward the hallway. I didn't even know where I was going, maybe to prove I still had control of something. "You went through my attic," I repeated. "What else did you touch?" Dorothy followed me. "Mom, please don't make this harder." "I'm not making it harder. You just made it final without me." Walter placed the key down on the table, like he was offering me something precious. "We didn't throw anything away. It's all in a storage unit nearby. Safe." "Safe," I repeated. I walked into the den, where the light from the window hit just right in the afternoons. The old photo wall was still there, but I noticed some of the frames were gone. The one of our beach trip, the one from my retirement party. I walked over slowly. "Did you take these too?" I asked. Dorothy didn't say anything, just stared at her shoes. "That swing on the porch," I said, turning toward her. "The one your father built. Where is it?" She paused. "It was rotting, Mom. We put it out for pickup." I turned back to the window. The porch looked bare, just empty space where comfort used to be. I stood there for a moment, hand on the curtain, heart pounding in a slow, dull rhythm. I wasn't sad yet. I was confused, disoriented, like someone had rearranged all the furniture in my life while I stepped out for groceries. Dorothy walked up behind me and placed a hand on my shoulder. "I know this is hard," she said, "but it's for the best." I didn't answer, because in that moment, something inside me shifted. It wasn't loud. It didn't come with a scream or a fight. It was quiet, heavy, and it told me this wasn't about helping me. This was about removing me, quietly, efficiently, with brochures and moving trucks. I turned to her, calm now. "I need some time." Dorothy looked unsure. "We just thought," I said. "I need time." Walter picked up the binder. "We'll leave this here. Look it over when you're ready." They walked toward the door. Dorothy paused at the frame. "We love you, Mom. We just want you to be comfortable." As the door shut behind them, I walked back to the kitchen. The orange still sitting there half peeled on the counter. I looked out the window at the porch again. The swing was gone. And for the first time in a long time, the silence in my house didn't feel peaceful. It felt like a warning. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. The house felt cold, even though the heater had clicked on during the night. I stayed in bed for a few minutes, just staring at the ceiling. I knew something wasn't right in my chest. Not pain exactly, but a kind of heavy ache, like something had shifted, and I didn't know how to shift with it. I made my way to the hallway closet. I hadn't looked in there for a while, but something told me to. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was the way Dorothy had looked away when I asked about what they moved. The closet light flickered a little as I opened the door. I reached up for the old blue storage bin, labeled Hollis Service. That was my late husband's name. Hollis. He served in the Navy for over 20 years. That bin had his medals, his discharge papers, his old letters, things that mattered. But when I opened the lid, my stomach dropped. It was nearly empty, just an old envelope with a faded return address and one pin left in the corner, the silver star he received in '79. Everything else was gone. The letters, the plaques, even the folded flag from his funeral. Gone. I sat right down on the floor. I couldn't speak. I couldn't even cry. I had told Dorothy once, years ago, never to touch that bin. I'd said it softly, in passing, during a clean out of the garage. She'd nodded, said, "Of course, Mom," like it was obvious. I never imagined she'd forget, or worse, ignore it. I got up slowly and went into the living room, picked up my phone, and opened the family group chat. I didn't scroll much, just enough to see what I had missed. Dorothy had been messaging Boyd, my nephew from Charlotte, the one who never called unless he needed something. Her message said, "We've started clearing out. It's long overdue." Boyd replied, "Good." That house was a time capsule. About time she moved on, or moved out. Then Dorothy, "I think once we stage it, it'll show well. Walter's talking to a guy at the bank tomorrow." I didn't even know what that meant. Stage it? Were they planning to sell my house? Or maybe they already had. They were talking about my home like it was a rental unit, like I was already gone. I set the phone down, carefully, like it might break if I held it any longer. I looked around the room. Everything felt different now. The recliner Hollis used to nap in was gone. The wall looked too bare without his framed ship photo. And the little wooden table he made in his workshop, replaced with a sleek side table that looked like it came from a discount catalog. They weren't waiting for me to say goodbye to this place. They were already saying goodbye for me. And I was still here, breathing, watching. I walked back to the spare room, what used to be Hollis's den, and pulled open the chest near the window. I hadn't opened that thing in years, mostly because it made me cry, but today, something pushed me. Inside were some of his old shirts, still faintly smelling like the cedar blocks we kept in there. I dug a little deeper, brushing aside a dusty journal and an old church bulletin. And then I found it, a folded-up brochure, yellowed with age, edges curled. It was a cruise pamphlet. Sail the southeastern coast, Charleston to the Keys and back. The photo on the front was a couple holding hands on a balcony. Their hair was silver, their faces soft with sun and peace. I remembered the night Hollis brought it home. "We'll take this one day," he'd said, tapping the brochure. "Once the kids are older and we're not running around every weekend." I'd laughed then, told him he better not wait too long. And then, like most promises made in love and time, it got buried under bills, broken appliances, grandbabies, and cancer. I sat on the floor with the brochure in my lap and let the memory roll through me like a quiet wave. I had waited. I had waited through Dorothy's divorces, through Walter's job changes, through the births and birthdays and missed holidays. I'd waited my whole life to be needed, and now that I wasn't, they were treating me like a piece of furniture no one wanted, but didn't have the heart to throw away. I didn't cry, I didn't curse, I just breathed. Then I stood up, took the brochure with me to the kitchen, and set it on the counter. I opened my drawer, the one with the takeout menus and grocery lists, and pulled out the little metal tin where I kept Hollis's backup debit card, the one he gave me, just in case. I flipped it over in my hand, thinking how strange it felt to make a choice just for myself. Not for Dorothy, not for Walter, not even for Hollis, just for me. I didn't need to ask anyone's permission, not anymore. I picked up my phone, searched for cruise lines leaving from Charleston, and found one that matched the old brochure almost exactly. Same route, same vibe. Leaving in 4 days. I stared at the screen, heart thudding like a drum in my chest, and then I booked it. No big speech, no dramatic music, just me, standing barefoot in my kitchen, staring out at an empty porch, realizing something deep in my bones. They think I don't belong here anymore. Fine, I'll leave on my own terms. The cruise was booked, 7 days, Charleston to the Keys and back. I didn't read every detail. I just knew it left in 4 days, and there was one spot left, at a price I could afford, using the card Hollis tucked away in the sewing kit years ago. He'd said, "For emergencies only." Well, if this wasn't one, I don't know what is. The day after I booked it, I called Dorothy. "I'm going to visit Peggy in Winston-Salem," I told her. "She's been asking me for months. Figured now's as good a time as any." Dorothy didn't question it. "That's probably a good idea. Some space might help you think clearly." I bit my tongue at that one. If only she knew how clear things had finally become. I spent the next evening packing. I didn't need much, just a suitcase, some clothes, my meds, and the usual bathroom stuff. I wasn't going on a fashion show. I just needed air, somewhere nobody had made up their mind about who I was supposed to be. While pulling a jacket from the hall closet, I noticed something behind the frame of our wedding photo. I hadn't touched that wall in years, but I felt something rattling in the back. I took it down, and there it was. A thin manila envelope, marked in Hollis's neat handwriting, "Legal." I opened it right there on the floor. Inside were our original will documents, a property deed, and handwritten notes. The will we'd made before Dorothy ever started whispering about just in case and long-term care. This one hadn't been touched or altered by anyone. It was still mine. I slid it into a plastic bag and tucked it into the bottom of my suitcase, beneath my walking shoes. I didn't know what I'd need it for, but something told me to take it. When the morning came, I left early, before the sun was all the way up. I left a note on the kitchen counter, "Gone to visit Peggy, back in a week, don't worry." I didn't say goodbye, not out of anger, but because I knew they wouldn't understand. If I gave them time, they'd try to stop me, or worse, pretend they supported it just to keep me calm. The Greyhound station was quiet, which I was grateful for. Just a few sleepy people with earbuds and snacks, minding their own business. I sat near the back of the bus, looking out the window while the driver checked tickets. My hands trembled a little, not from fear, but from a strange excitement I hadn't felt in years. Halfway through the ride, somewhere near Columbia, I pulled out my phone and opened Facebook Messenger. I hadn't talked to Beverly or Inez in a while. Life just scattered us like leaves, but I typed anyway. Hey, you two still cruising like you always talked about? Didn't expect a reply, not right away. But within an hour, Inez wrote back, Josephine, are you serious? We're boarding in Charleston tomorrow. Carnival line. 7 days. Please tell me you're coming. Then Beverly chimed in. Well, I'll be. Look at God. Get ready, girl. We've got a drink with your name on it. I sat there on that bus, surrounded by strangers, and smiled until my cheeks hurt. I hadn't told them anything. Not about the house, not about Dorothy, not about the swing that vanished or the medals that were gone. But they didn't ask. They were just happy to hear from me. By the time the bus pulled into the terminal in Charleston the next morning, my heart felt like it had loosened its grip on something heavy. The air smelled salty and thick, the way it always does near the coast. The cruise ship was enormous, white and shiny, with banners flapping and people bustling in every direction. I stood there on the sidewalk for a moment, watching families with matching shirts and couples holding hands. For a second, I felt out of place, too old, too alone. Then I spotted Beverly's wide-brimmed hat waving above the crowd like a flag. Joe, she hollered, marching straight toward me with Inez close behind her. Lord, it's been too long. We hugged like people who hadn't seen each other in years, which we hadn't, but it felt like no time had passed at all. They didn't ask questions, not yet. They just picked up one end of my suitcase and said, let's get on this ship before they change their minds. The check-in was quick. I handed over my ID, got my key card, and followed the crowd up the ramp. My feet felt unsteady, not just from the slope, but from everything. The weight of what I'd left behind. The shock that I was actually doing this. As I stepped onto the ship, the breeze hit my face, warm, clean, and full of salt. It carried away the last pieces of doubt I didn't know I was still holding. It didn't feel like running. It felt like starting. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like someone being pushed out. I felt like a woman walking into her own story. That first night on the ship felt like stepping into another world. Everything was shiny and loud and full of color. Buffets with food I couldn't pronounce. Couples dancing to music that pulsed through the floor. Kids running past in flip-flops. It was the kind of energy I hadn't felt in years, maybe ever. Beverly and Inez were already at home here. They waved at everyone like cruise regulars and somehow knew exactly where to go for everything. We're hitting the lounge tonight, Inez said, looping her arm through mine. First drinks on me. Actually, no, it's included, but I'm still calling it mine. Beverly chuckled and added, you need a drink in your hand, Joe. Preferably something that doesn't come with a lid or a receipt. I let them lead me down to a cozy lounge, tucked in the corner of Deck 5. It wasn't the main bar. This one was quieter. Low lights, soft music, grown-ups only. My kind of place. We found a booth near the back, and before I could even decide what to order, a bartender with kind eyes and a tired smile walked over. What can I get for you ladies tonight? He asked. Inez asked for a sangria. Beverly went straight for her usual. Something sweet with a cherry on top. I hesitated. Glass of red, I said, unsure. He nodded, then looked at me a little longer. Rough day? I blinked at him. Something like that. Then it's on the house, just this one. He walked off, and I watched him go. Surprised at how quickly kindness from a stranger could soften your whole mood. His name was Leonard, we'd learn later. Said he'd been working cruises for almost a decade. Said he could tell within 10 seconds who needed a double and who just needed to talk. When he handed me the wine, he smiled again. Try this one. It's simple and steady, like a good conversation. Inez winked. See, I told you cruises are good for your soul. I sipped it. It was better than I expected. For the next hour or so, we sat and laughed, mostly about nothing. They asked me about Winston-Salem, and I let them believe that's where I'd been headed. I didn't talk about Dorothy, or the porch swing, or the attic, but I did tell them I was tired, that things back home felt off, that I needed space to think, and that was enough for them. They didn't press. At one point, Leonard walked by again and asked if I wanted another. I almost said no, but then I said yes. Halfway through the second glass, the music changed to something slower. Leonard turned the lights down just a bit more. Couples started drifting onto the small dance floor, and Inez nudged me with her elbow. "Look at you, Josephine, sitting there like a mystery in a Hallmark movie." I laughed. It felt good, real. I wasn't pretending, at least not entirely. We stayed until close, and when we finally stood to leave, I realized my shoulders weren't as tight. My hands weren't clenched. I'd stopped bracing for something bad. Back in my cabin, I peeled off my shoes and sat on the edge of the bed. The ship swayed gently, just enough to remind me I was somewhere unfamiliar, somewhere floating. I plugged in my phone, not really expecting anything, but there it was. 2 new messages from Dorothy. The first one was just a photo, my kitchen. The table was bare, the curtains were different, and the spice rack Hollis made was gone. The second was a short video. I pressed play. Dorothy and Walter were in my living room. My living room. They were holding champagne glasses. "To new beginnings," Dorothy said with a grin. "It's finally ours now." Walter raised his glass and added, "No more guilt, no more clutter, just fresh air and freedom." In the background, I could see the wall where our bookshelf used to be. It was gone, replaced with some sleek cabinet I didn't recognize, and the wedding photo that hung over the mantel, missing. I stared at the screen, frozen. They hadn't waited. They hadn't asked. They had taken it upon themselves to erase me, piece by piece, while I was still breathing. My chest tightened, and the tears came fast. Not the soft kind, the sharp, silent kind that sting your eyes and throat all at once. I didn't sob. I didn't scream. I just sat there, phone still in hand, staring at people I raised, laughing in a house I built, as if I never mattered. The wine glass from earlier was still on the nightstand. I reached for it slowly, lifted it, and saw the smudge of my lipstick on the rim. I held it for a moment, then I whispered, "No more." Not sadness, not fear, just a choice. No more letting people decide who I was. No more giving pieces of myself away to people who saw me as a chore. No more waiting to be remembered. Just no more. The morning after that video from Dorothy, I couldn't sleep. I got up before the sun, threw on a cardigan, and went up to the quiet deck where no one else was yet. Just me and the wind. I didn't even bring my phone. I just needed to breathe. Later, at breakfast, I sat with Beverly and Inez again, but I wasn't all there. I kept stirring my coffee and forgetting I'd already added sugar. I think they knew something was wrong. They didn't ask though, not yet. It wasn't until mid-morning, back in one of the ship's quieter lounges, that I saw her, Terry McMillan. We used to work at the same community college back in the day. She was a real estate paralegal for years before that, and always the first to speak up when something didn't sit right. Short gray hair, glasses on a chain, and a walk that said she didn't take nonsense from anyone. I almost didn't believe it was her. But then she turned and smiled, and I said, "Terry." She blinked, then laughed. "Josephine Thomas, from Asheville." We hugged like old church friends, surprised and glad at the same time. We got to talking, and I don't know what came over me, but I told her everything. Not every detail, but enough. About Dorothy. About the house. The swing. The storage key. Even the video from last night. Terry's face went serious. "You said your daughter's husband is talking to a bank." I nodded. "Have you checked if your property title's been changed, or if they filed a trust without your consent?" I paused. "I haven't looked. I don't even know where to check." Terry leaned in. "It happens more than people think, especially with seniors. They create family trusts, and slide the paperwork through by saying the person is confused or forgetful. Do you still have your husband's original will? I told her about the envelope I'd found behind the picture frame, how I'd brought it with me on instinct. Good, she said firmly. That may be the most important thing you packed. Right then, Beverly walked over with fresh coffee and sat down. What's going on? I hesitated, but Terry stepped in. Your friend may be getting pushed out of her home illegally. We need to confirm something. Beverly didn't skip a beat. Give me a number, I'll call Tina. Tina was my neighbor back in Asheville. Lived next door for 20 years. The kind of woman who noticed everything but didn't gossip unless you needed to know. Beverly dialed, then handed me the phone. Tina answered right away. Josephine, are you okay? I cleared my throat. I'm fine, just out of town for a bit. Tina, has anyone been at my house this week? There was a pause. Honey, I didn't want to overstep, but yes, Dorothy's been there. Walter too. 3 times, maybe more. They brought a man with a measuring tape yesterday. I figured maybe you were moving. I felt the air go out of my lungs. They didn't tell me anything. Then Tina said something that hit even harder. I got a flyer in the mailbox this morning. Open house this Saturday. Your address was on it. I hung up without another word. I just stared at the floor. They're selling my house, I said out loud. They didn't even ask. They just decided. Terry stood up. We need to make a record, right now. She walked us to her cabin. Her room looked like a mini office. Neat piles of paper, a tablet, even a portable printer. She explained that she always brought backup work with her, just in case people called her for legal advice, even in retirement. She pulled out a small webcam from her bag and clipped it to her laptop. You're going to make a video, Will, she said. State clearly who you are, what's happening, what documents you have, and that you are of sound mind. I sat down, brushed my hair behind my ears, and took a breath. I looked into the camera and started talking. My name is Josephine Thomas. I live in Asheville, North Carolina. I am not confused. I am not unstable. I know who I am, where I am, and what's happening to me. I went on for 10 minutes. Terry made sure I touched every point. Beverly stood nearby with her arms crossed like a guard dog. When I finished, I felt shaky, but clear. Terry saved the video onto a flash drive and handed it to me. Keep this safe, and when you get home, don't tell them anything. Let them think they're winning. I turned the flash drive over in my hand. It was small, lighter than a pen, but in that moment, it felt heavier than anything I'd carried in years. They want me gone, I said, sliding it into the bottom of my purse. Then, I looked at Beverly and Terry, both waiting quietly. Well, I said with a slow smile, let's give them a reason to believe it. That Saturday, while I was sitting in the ship's cafe sipping tea, Beverly leaned across the table and handed me her phone. You might want to see this, she said. I took it from her slowly. On the screen was a post from my niece, Boyd's daughter, of all people. A photo of my living room, filled with smiling faces, plates of food, bottles of wine, balloons that read, New Beginnings. The caption said, Brunch at Aunt Dorothy's, love her new space, beautiful home, great vibes. I stared at the photo for a long time. The couch was mine. The wall behind it used to hold family photos. Now it had a big modern art piece that didn't belong. They were hosting a brunch in my house, laughing in the home Hollis and I built, like I was a memory already boxed up and moved out. I didn't feel sad this time. I felt something else, something steady. Time to get to work, I said quietly. Back in Terry's room, we laid out every piece of paper we'd gathered so far. My original will, the video on the flash drive, notes from Tina, screenshots of the online listing. It looked like we were preparing for battle, and in a way we were. Terry walked me through each form I needed to send. One to revoke any power of attorney they might have tried to file. One to declare my full mental competency. And one to put a temporary freeze on any property transfer until I could appear in person. You'll need a notary, she said. Luckily, I'm still licensed. She pulled out a small stamp from her suitcase, like it was just another cruise essential. Beverly couldn't help but laugh. What kind of woman brings a notary stamp on vacation? The kind who's seen families try to steal from each other at nursing homes, Terry replied. We filled out everything, signed the pages, and scanned copies to email to my county clerk's office back in Asheville. The originals, we packed in a protective folder and slipped into the ship's mail service with express delivery. I felt a little more grounded with every paper I sealed. Later that afternoon, I got a message from Dorothy. Just a few lines. Don't come back angry. We're doing what's best for everyone. Hope you're enjoying Winston-Salem. Love you. I stared at the message, reading it twice. It didn't feel like love. It felt like someone tying a ribbon around a box they already gave away. I didn't reply. Instead, I asked Beverly and Inez to meet me on the sun deck with Terry. I had something else to do. We found a quiet spot near the railing. The sun was just starting to lower, painting the sky with that soft orange that always reminded me of Sunday afternoons back home. I set up Terry's camera again and stood straight. I need to say this out loud, I told them. I pressed record and looked into the lens. My name is Josephine Thomas. I'm 63 years old. I'm of sound mind. I've raised 2 children. I worked for 40 years in education. I paid off my home. I paid my bills. I buried my husband, and I've kept going. But lately, the people I love have started treating me like I'm invisible, like I'm a burden. They've moved my things, made plans without me, changed my house, changed my future, all without asking. This isn't about revenge. It's about dignity, about being seen, about not letting my story end with someone else holding the pen. I paused, took a breath, and kept going. I'm making this statement to protect what's mine, my memories, my choices, my name. I'm not confused, I'm not lost, and I'm not stepping aside just because it's easier for someone else. When I finished, I turned off the camera and sat down. My hands were shaking, but it wasn't fear. It was adrenaline, relief, the feeling of finally saying what I hadn't even realized I needed to say. Beverly hugged me from the side. That's the woman I remember, she whispered. We sat there a while in silence. No one checked their phones. No one rushed to fill the space. We just let the sun do what it does best, soften everything it touches. I looked out at the water, stretching all the way to the horizon, the wind brushing against my face, the hum of the ship cutting forward through the waves. And I said something I didn't even plan. They erased me from my own story, I whispered. Then I closed my eyes and added, I'm taking the pen back. I got off the bus in Asheville just after 7 in the morning. The sky was gray, and there was a chill in the air that hadn't been there when I left. I stood at the curb a minute before calling for a rideshare. I didn't want to ask anyone I knew. I didn't want anyone to know I was coming back. Not yet. When the car pulled up to my street, I almost didn't recognize it. The yard had been trimmed, the flower beds covered in fresh mulch. The porch had been swept clean. But it felt too clean, like someone was trying too hard to make it look untouched. I rolled my suitcase up the front walkway, reached for my house key, and hesitated. My hand shook as I turned the lock. The door opened too easily. The moment I stepped inside, my heart dropped. My house didn't feel like mine anymore. The walls had been painted a soft beige, the kind of color you see in model homes. My floral curtains were gone, replaced with stiff white blinds. The rug from our 30th anniversary trip to Charleston had vanished. In its place was a thin gray one that looked like it came from a big box store. I walked into the living room. The bookshelf was half empty. No photos, no books, no framed cross-stitch from my mother. The couch was the same, but the cushions had been swapped out. My rocking chair, gone. I moved slowly, like I was walking through someone else's home, not the one I'd spent the last 20 years keeping warm. The kitchen felt even worse. The ceramic rooster I'd kept by the stove, gone. My mugs replaced. The magnets from the grandkids' drawings were off the fridge. It was spotless, lifeless. I opened a few drawers, Empty. No dish towels, no recipes, no notepads with scribbled grocery lists. I stood in the center of the room and closed my eyes for a second, trying to steady myself. Then I heard the front door open, footsteps, and then Walter's voice. "Yeah, the photographer said lighting looks good in the mornings. If we push staging up a day." He stopped mid-sentence when he saw me standing in the kitchen. "Josephine," he said, voice tight. "What are you doing here?" I didn't answer right away. I let him sit in that shock. He hung up the call without another word. "I live here," I said, calm and clear. "What are you doing here?" Walter looked pale. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. "We didn't expect you yet," Dorothy said. "Dorothy doesn't run this house," I cut in. "And clearly, you both forgot that I'm still alive." He took a step forward, hands up like he wanted to explain. "We thought you were still in Winston-Salem." That lie worked better when I hadn't seen my living room turned into your weekend brunch spot. He blinked. "You saw the video?" I nodded. "And the listing? And the storage unit key? And the forged trust documents?" He froze. I walked past him, into the hallway where our wedding photo used to hang. Just a nail was left. "I know about everything," I said over my shoulder. "And I've already taken legal steps, revoked power of attorney, reinstated my original will, filed a notarized statement and video, all of it." Just then the door opened again. Dorothy stepped in, sunglasses on her head, holding a drink tray with 2 coffees. She stopped cold when she saw me. "What the hell?" she said. "You're supposed to be gone?" I asked. "Supposed to be out of the way." She looked at Walter, then back at me. "Mom, we didn't mean to hurt you. We were trying to help. You've been stressed. Forgetting things, the oven." "That's not concern," I said, voice sharper now. "That's convenience. You wanted the house. You wanted control. So you decided I was the problem." Walter tried to speak again. "Vivian said." "I don't care what Vivian said," I snapped. "I don't care what story you told yourselves to make this okay. What you did was wrong. And the next time we talk, it'll be in court." Dorothy's face changed then. The concern vanished. Her eyes narrowed. "You're overreacting," she said. "We were trying to protect you." I shook my head. You were trying to erase me." We stood there in silence for a long moment. Then I turned and walked down the hallway toward my bedroom. It was the only room they hadn't touched too much. My comforter was still there, my dresser, the old photo of Hollis and me on our first road trip. I sat on the bed, pulled open the drawer, and took out the flash drive. I slid it under my pillow, where I used to hide things from the kids when they were little. Then I turned the lock on my door. The click echoed louder than I expected. I sat down and looked around my room. One of the last corners of my life they hadn't scrubbed clean. They thought they'd gotten away with it, but they forgot who taught them how to plan. And they forgot whose name was still on the deed. Court day came faster than I expected. I didn't sleep the night before. I lay in bed with that flash drive tucked under my pillow and the folder of documents beside me. My hands trembled when I poured my morning coffee, but my mind was sharp, clearer than it had been in years. Beverly picked me up in her car. She didn't say much on the ride, and I was grateful for the quiet. Terry was already waiting at the courthouse, standing near the entrance in her navy blue blazer, holding the manila folder like it held gold. "You ready?" she asked. I nodded. "I've been ready." The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Just a few rows of benches, a judge's bench up front, and a table for each side. It felt more like a school meeting than something that could change the rest of my life. Dorothy and Walter were already there. Dorothy wore a beige suit, too polished for her usual style. She clutched a folder close to her chest, like it might shield her. Walter looked tired, hair out of place, eyes red. We didn't speak. The judge was a woman in her 50s, glasses low on her nose, no nonsense from the first moment. Dorothy's lawyer started. He talked about concern, about care, about mental decline. I sat quietly, hands folded, and let him say his piece. Then the judge turned to Terry. "You may present your case." Terry stood like she'd been preparing for this her whole life. She handed the judge copies of everything: my original will, the video of my statement from the cruise, screenshots of the texts, the online listing for my home, and the notarized letters we'd sent ahead. She explained, in plain terms, how I'd been deliberately pushed out of my home under false claims, how my daughter and son-in-law had moved my things, changed the locks, and tried to sell my property, all without legal authority. Then she played the video. There I was, on screen, sitting on the cruise ship deck, wind in my hair, speaking directly into the camera. I'm not confused. I'm not unstable. I am Josephine Thomas. I know who I am. I know what they've done, and I won't let it go unanswered. The room went still. The judge didn't blink. When the video ended, Terry said softly, "Your Honor, everything they did was based on a lie." The judge looked down at the papers, then at me. "Mrs. Thomas," she said, "do you wish to speak?" I stood slowly, legs stiff from sitting too long. "Yes, ma'am." I cleared my throat. "My children didn't just try to move me out of my house. They tried to move me out of my life. They decided I was no longer useful. They made plans for my things, my home, my future, while I was still here, still standing, still breathing. I'm not here today because I want revenge. I'm here because people like me, women my age, get written off too easily. We become background noise in our own families. And sometimes people mistake our silence for weakness. That's their first mistake." The judge watched me closely. I sat back down. Her ruling was clear. The court finds the original will valid. The power of attorney granted to Ms. Dorothy Thomas and Mr. Walter Grant is hereby revoked. The trust filed on behalf of Mrs. Thomas is void. Additionally, I am referring this matter for investigation under the state's elder abuse and exploitation statutes. Dorothy gasped. Walter sank lower in his seat. It was done. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I just exhaled. After the hearing, Walter caught me near the courthouse steps. He looked like a boy who'd just been sent to the principal's office. "I'm sorry, Josephine," he said quietly. "I didn't know she was going to go that far. I should have stopped it." I looked at him. "Yes, you should have." He didn't argue, just nodded and walked away. Dorothy didn't speak to me, didn't look at me. She got into the car and slammed the door without a word. I didn't chase her. I didn't need to. She'd already shown me who she was, and I'd shown her I wasn't going down quietly. That night, back in my own room, finally mine again, I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of chamomile tea and a blank notebook. I started sketching out an idea that had been swirling in my mind since the cruise. A fund for women like me, for older folks who get talked over, pushed aside, manipulated by their own families. Terry had agreed to help with the paperwork. Beverly offered to help get the word out. I called it the Hollis Foundation for Dignity, named after my husband, because I knew he would have stood beside me every step of the way if he were still here. It wasn't about punishment. It was about protection. Because if this happened to me, a woman with a home, a voice, and good friends, then I could only imagine what happens to those who have no one. As I sealed the envelope with the first round of paperwork, I felt a calm I hadn't felt in a long time. Exhausted, yes, but stronger than I'd been in years. They thought I'd never fight back, but they were wrong. It had been exactly 1 year since I stepped onto this very ship for the first time. Back then, I was just trying to breathe, trying to remember who I was, after being treated like I didn't matter, like I didn't count anymore. But today, I wasn't just a passenger. I was a guest speaker. They were hosting an elder advocacy summit on board, panels, workshops, community groups, and I'd been asked to share my story, not because it was dramatic or special, but because it was real. Because too many women like me don't get the chance to speak up until it's too late. As I stepped off the elevator and walked toward the event hall, I could hear the hum of people talking, laughing, greeting one another. I straightened my name badge, Josephine Thomas, founder, the Hollis Foundation for Dignity. It still gave me chills to see it in writing. I entered the ballroom, and there they were, Beverly and Inez, sitting right in the front row like proud sisters. Inez waved me over with a big grin. "You look sharp, Joe," she said, adjusting my scarf. "Got that woman on a mission glow," Beverly added. I smiled. I didn't feel nervous, not like I thought I would. I felt calm, rooted, like a tree that had finally grown into its soil. After a few opening remarks, they called my name. I walked to the small stage, looked out at the crowd, mostly older women, a few men, and some younger advocates, and I took a deep breath. "My name is Josephine Thomas," I began, "and 1 year ago, I boarded this ship because I needed to get away. What I didn't realize was that I was really trying to get back to myself." I told them the story, not every gritty detail, but the truth of it, how my family decided I didn't matter, how they planned behind my back, how they nearly erased me from my own life, and how I fought back, with help, with proof, with a voice I thought I had lost. I talked about the importance of legal protections, of keeping your documents close, of trusting your gut when something doesn't feel right, and of surrounding yourself with people who lift you up, not ones who use love as a leash. When I finished, the room was quiet for a second. Then came the applause. I stepped down and went back to my seat, heart full. Inez slipped a tissue in my hand. Beverly gave my arm a squeeze. "That's our girl," she whispered. Later that evening, we all got dressed up for the gala on the top deck. Soft jazz played, the stars were out, and the ocean breeze felt like a hug. I was sipping on cranberry juice when a staff member walked over with a small envelope. "For you, ma'am, someone asked that it be delivered to you today." I opened it. Inside was a short letter from Walter. "Josephine, I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know I've been going to counseling. I've learned more in this past year than I did in the last 20. I'm truly sorry for all of it. If you ever want to talk, I'll be here. No pressure, just trying to do better. Walter." I folded the note and slipped it into my purse. I didn't know how I felt about it yet, but I knew I appreciated it. That was something. Around 10 o'clock, I wandered away from the music and found a quiet spot near the railing. Just like I had a year before, I held my glass in one hand and rested the other on the cool metal edge, watching the water stretch endlessly ahead. The moonlight shimmered on the waves, and the ship moved forward, steady, smooth, sure. And for the first time in my life, I felt the same. This journey didn't just change me, it brought me back to myself. Not the mother or the widow or the woman behind the curtain. Me, Josephine. I've spent the past year helping other seniors protect themselves. I've spoken at libraries, churches, community centers. I've sat with women who were crying and confused and tired. And I've told them, "You still matter." Because we do. We always have. I turned my eyes toward the stars and let the wind carry my thoughts. What would you do if the people you loved treated you like you didn't matter anymore? Would you let it break you? Or would you find the courage to take your life back, one step at a time? I want you, whoever's watching, to really think about that. And if my story meant something to you, if it reminded you of your own strength, or your mother's, or your grandmother's, then please, like, share, and comment below. Tell me what you would have done, or what you did do. And don't forget to subscribe for more real stories, from real women who've lived through it all and still rise, because we're not done yet, not by a long shot.